Effects of the establishment of the Israeli ethnostate. Today we'll be talking about the effects of the establishment of the Israeli ethnostate, roughly 1948 to present. We'll look at the effects on Palestinians, the Jewish diaspora, and the U.S. population. Note: whenever you see the key icon, this means the slide contains a key term which corresponds to a worksheet question. You can use the printed worksheet if you've been given one, or you can scan the QR code or type in the URL shown on the left-hand side of the screen. The most tangible and devastating effects of the establishment of the Israeli ethnostate are those experienced by Palestinians. It is a myth that Palestine was a land without people for people without a land. The area was under the rule of the Ottoman Empire from 1516 through 1917, and the truth is that Palestine was populated by Muslims, Jews, and Christians who lived in Palestine together. The graph shows population in thousands of each religious demographic in Palestine, up through 1947, and the picture shows a Jewish synagogue in Palestine in 1893. When the Ottoman Empire fell in 1917, the British seized control of Palestine and issued the Balfour Declaration, a key date and document for the worksheet, which indicated support for creating a Jewish homeland in Palestine. This supported the secular Zionist movement, which pushed for Jewish people to create their own country in Palestine, and deepened tensions between Jewish settlers and indigenous Palestinians. A few years after the fall of the Ottoman Empire, the League of Nations designated Palestine as officially under British rule, per the agreement or documentation known as the British Mandate for Palestine. The Holocaust of the Jewish people during World War II, which ended in 1945, resulted in the deaths of approximately 6 million Jews, and following World War II the newly formed United Nations proposed carving up Palestine to give portions of it to the Jewish people to create a homeland. In 1948 this occurred when the Israeli state was established, leading to nearby Arab countries attacking the new state in what later became known as the First Arab-Israeli War. The destruction of at least 500 Palestinian villages, expulsions, massacres, and widespread displacement of over 700,000 indigenous Palestinians during this time became known as the Nakba, or the catastrophe. By the end of March the following year, the new state of Israel controlled almost 40% more land than in the original partition plan proposed by the UN. 2 decades later, in 1967, the Six-Day War also created mass displacement, and that was known as the Nakba, or setback. For more information on land grabs, changing borders, illegal Israeli settlements, and more, check out the amazing resource website Conquer and Divide: The Shattering of Palestinian Space by Israel, which has a timeline with videos and interactive maps. This map shows concentrations of Palestinian resettlement worldwide, with the greatest number of Palestinians being in Jordan, Syria, and Chile as of 2021. Significant populations are also in Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and the United States. Remember, Palestine was populated and developed prior to mass Jewish immigration. Jews, Muslims, and Christians lived in Palestine together. This sketch from Irish writer and activist Tig Hickey encapsulates key considerations in the discussion of the lesson topic.
This is actually my place. Well, me and my family have lived here for generations. Who told you that? This ancient book of made-up stories. Would you be happy enough just to piss off or die? No. All right, calm down. God, you're so confrontational. Plan B, let's share. How could that possibly work? I get the house, you get the shed. Are you kidding me? I get a few guns, alarms, a few cameras to keep an eye on you, and obviously nothing gets in or out, including yourself, without my say-so. But yeah, I think I'm willing to compromise on this. What the hell are you doing? Defending myself and my home? Oh, why are you so violent and angry? He just kicked me out of my house. Where were you for that part of the story? What's the headline here? Housing dispute, conflict. I'll just put, it's complicated. New owner seeks peaceful house shed resolution with terrifying legacy tenant.
This graphic from Visualizing Palestine shows how Jewish immigration to the Israeli state followed the Zionist movement to create and maintain a homeland by displacing and replacing Palestinians. Some Americans may ask, why don't Palestinians just leave? In the first place, this premise is flawed. The sentiment supports ethnic cleansing, which is the systematic and forced removal of a specific ethnic or religious group from a territory, often justified by the belief that the targeted group is undesirable. A second point is that Palestinians may very rightly want to stay in their homelands. And third, many Palestinians can't leave. Most Arab nations do not want to absorb a refugee population or normalize Israel by taking in people it expels. Additionally, Israel severely limits Palestinian movement, even leading to many deaths of people are denied medical evacuation. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said in March 2019 that Israel is not a state of all its citizens, it is the nation-state of the Jewish people and them alone. This commentary following the passage of Israel's 2018 nation-state law formalized what had long been the practice of the Israeli state, giving special preference and rights to Jewish people and devaluing and stripping legal rights and protections from non-Jewish people. This is a prime example of an ethnostate, a nation that only gives citizenship or full rights to members of a particular racial or ethnic group. If you weren't aware of the policies of the Israeli ethnostate before now, perhaps it will remind you of another system of ethnic or racial segregation abroad. Apartheid South Africa. Apartheid is a system or policy of segregation, i.e. in public services or housing, and/or discrimination based on race, or some other unchangeable attribute of a person. The map in the top right shows Bantustans in South Africa and SW Africa, which under oppressive colonial and post-colonial all-white governmental rule, were reserves or reservations created for black South Africans who had been stripped of citizenship and rights. The map at the bottom shows the changing control of Palestine from 1917 to the UN proposed partition in 1947, all the way to 2011 where almost all the landmass is controlled by Israel and Palestinian rights even in Palestinian areas are severely limited. In oppressive regimes like apartheid South Africa and in the Israeli ethnostate, freedom of movement was and is restricted for those not in power or those not privileged. The photo on the left shows black women in South Africa demonstrating against pass laws in 1956. Passes were essentially passports that were required for every black person to carry in order to go anywhere, even for work. On the right is a movie poster for a 2025 film called Al-Bahar, The Sea, which follows Khaled, a 12-year-old boy from a Palestinian village. He is denied the chance to go with his classmates on a trip to the sea, after Israeli soldiers at a checkpoint arbitrarily declare his travel permit invalid. He sets out alone to reach the sea, and his father risks his life to find his son amidst the Israeli checkpoints. This clip from an Al Jazeera report shows one of countless instances where Palestinians' movement is restricted by Israel.
We literally just got here and a bunch of soldiers stopped us, started yelling at us, started harassing my cameraman. They just asked to see our IDs. I showed my US passport. To all of a sudden have like 6 or 7 armed Israeli soldiers just swarm you. It's honestly really upsetting that this is how you get welcome to your own home city. The former soldiers I'm spending the day with say this is a typical scene.
When you consider the fact that they grew up in Israeli society, they have education and media and the political system, all of those elements are telling them that Arabs are scary, Palestinians are bad. And then they get an opportunity when they're in the army, they have power in their hands, and it's not surprising that they use it.
Finally, the soldiers give us back our IDs.
Let's continue, right? It's a very classic demonstration of one of the elements of the occupation, which is complete arbitrariness, right? And every soldier in the occupied territories has the authority on his own decision to detain anyone for 3 hours. Yeah? So we were not delayed here for 3 hours, and we are going to continue our tour, obviously, but it's an example.
But what a way to start the day. I'm about to learn that what I just experienced is nothing compared to what the Palestinians who live here go through every day. This is Fadil, who has lived in this home his whole life. In the 1980s, Israel set up this checkpoint in front of his house. Fadil now has to check in every time he leaves or enters his own home. كيف بتضايقوا عليكم؟
زي ما انت شايفه بخلوش قرايبنا يجوا علينا.
حترى
يعني بنتي متجوزه مين مسموح لها تيجي جوزها لا.
واو، وهلا لما بتمرق ايش لازم تفرجيه؟
اسمه ورقم هويتي.
وانت بتقدر تمشي هون مش ممنوع؟
بس لحديتي.
واو.
ممنوع.
Fadil isn't alone. Thousands of other Palestinians in Hebron are also forced to pass military checkpoints just to go home. The military also bans Palestinians from using certain streets, as Ori shows me.
On that street over there, Palestinians are allowed to walk and open businesses, but not allowed to drive. The yellow street on the map is a street where Palestinians are only allowed to walk, not allowed to drive, and not allowed to open businesses. The streets that we're heading towards are mostly sterile, meaning that no Palestinian in the whole wide world can walk on those streets. If you do one step over here, no Palestinians are allowed here. If we take one step here, here Palestinians are allowed. And I don't know any other word to call this than apartheid.
All these restrictions help Israel maintain its hold on Hebron, but they're also in place to protect Israeli settlers. And the ones in Hebron are known for being among the most violent in all of the occupied West Bank.
Our order in Hebron is protect the Jewish settlers, right? We don't have an order protect Palestinians if settlers harass
The
them.
soldiers never protect the Palestinians.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not in our order.
If you ever speak with a Palestinian refugee about their family's experience, the topic of keys may come up. When the Nakba occurred, resettled and refugee Palestinian families took the keys to their homes with them, and keep them as a remembrance of their right to return to their homes and homeland, whether or not their homes still stand. Israel continually practices dispossession, depriving Palestinians of land, property, or other possessions. Even when their homes aren't being threatened, Israeli government and Israeli settlers deny Palestinians access to water, steal or kill their goats and sheep, destroy or deny access to olive groves, and make it illegal to gather traditional herbs on which their sustenance and livelihoods depend. In August of 2025, the Israeli military was documented uprooting and destroying thousands of Palestinian olive trees, meaning to discourage Palestinians from returning to their ancestral homes and olive groves, and to break ties with the land. Even Palestinian children are arrested and harassed when they forage for food. This video from November 2023 briefly explains how Israel limits access to basic necessities such as water, and destroys Palestinian infrastructure for both communities and individual families. Since before the founding of the Israeli ethnostate, Jewish immigrants sought to learn how to cook with local Palestinian ingredients. This was not done in the spirit of appreciation, however, recognizing the origins of various foods and the Palestinian people's deep ties to the land and the foods grown there, like olives and wild thyme called za'atar. Rather, Israeli Jews uproot and burn Palestinian olive trees as previously mentioned, prevent Palestinians from accessing their orchards, and make it illegal for Palestinians to harvest traditional herbs, which Israelis then themselves gather and market as Israeli goods. The practice of Israel claiming ownership of Palestinian and other popular Arab dishes without acknowledging their origins, and benefiting from hiding their origins is an example of culinary appropriation. Israel's culinary appropriation of za'atar and other foods indigenous to Palestine are part of its erasure attempts of Palestinians, engaging in revisionism, rewriting history for political or ideological agendas. Revisionism can also be reinterpreting history given new evidence or perspectives not previously included. Now let's take a look at just a few foods that the Israeli state has used in its culinary appropriation movement.
What's your favorite Israeli food?
Brisket. Filter fish.
Israeli couscous.
Sukaniot.
Falafel.
Matzo ball soup.
Hummus.
Schnitzel.
Baba ganoush.
Paula.
Cucumbers, tomatoes, Israeli salad. Woo!
Here is a full list of the foods mentioned in the video we just watched. While some are credited as being traditional foods of Ashkenazi Jews, it's important to note that these foods were European Jews' versions of traditional European foods, and no examples here date back or can be traced to the actual land of Palestine when the Israeli state claims the land belonged to the, quote, Israelites. And the most chilling effect that the establishment of the Israeli ethnostate has had on Palestinians, Israel's decades-long endgame, to make the land a fully Jewish state has recently led to blatant and televised genocide, the deliberate and systematic destruction of a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group in whole or in part. There are 5 genocidal acts as defined by the UN, and committing even one of these acts constitutes a genocide. Israel has committed 4 of these acts. Number 1. Killing. Number 2. Causing serious bodily or mental harm. Number 3. Deliberately inflicting conditions of life calculated to bring about the destruction of the Palestinians in whole or in part. And number 4. imposing measures intended to prevent births. The fifth act is forcibly transferring children of the group to another community group to prevent the continuation of the group's culture and identity. This isn't happening because Israel is just killing children too. Here are just a few of those killed by the Israeli ethnostate. Journalists have been particularly targeted.
Khaled referred to his granddaughter, Reem, as soul of my soul. They were killed 1 year apart. Journalists Moz Abu Taha, Ahmed Abu Aziz, and Hassam al-Masri were all killed in 2025. Mariam Abu Daka, also a journalist, was survived by her son, to whom she wrote a touching goodbye letter, knowing journalists were being targeted. Anas al-Sharif, another journalist, is survived by his mother, wife, and 2 children.
Hind Rajab,
only 5 years old, was killed by Israeli forces along with 6 family members and 2 paramedics coming to their rescue as they fled Gaza City looking for safety.
The recording of her phone call to the emergency workers who tried to get her out was used in the creation of a docudrama film released in 2025. In her call with emergency workers, she begs them to come soon, saying everyone else in the car is dead, that an Israeli tank is nearby and she is afraid of the dark.
ايش يا عمري؟ يا حبيبتي يا عمري والله معك، هيني انا مش تاركك، بحكي معاكي، ما بدي اصلا اتركك. ايه؟ ايش؟ حبيبتي والله لو بإيدي لأجيكي نحكي يا الله يا رب تحمينا يا رب تحمينا.
Please take a moment. Pause and continue when ready. Now let's take a look at the effects on the Jewish diaspora. Note that a diaspora is a population scattered across regions which are different from their real or claimed geographic place of origin. This map shows the world Jewish population as of 2018, and we can see that the largest Jewish diaspora by far is located in the United States, with significant numbers also in France, the UK, Canada, Russia, and Argentina. But what makes someone Jewish? Jewish identity is a bit nuanced. Someone can be religiously Jewish by being raised in a household where Judaism is practiced, continuing to practice the faith as an adult, or by converting to the religion as a conscious choice as an adult. Jewish identity can also be cultural or ancestral in nature. A person may consider themselves Jewish because they observe certain cultural traditions, which may be religious-based like observing Hanukkah, but which can be celebrated by non-religious individuals, or because they have ancestors who practiced these traditions or followed Judaism. People who consider themselves Jewish today might be non-religious but have ancestors who practiced Judaism and were pressured or forced to move due to religious differences at the time. The secular Zionist movement pushing for a homeland for Jewish people led to many Jews immigrating to Palestine, where you may recall we established that Muslims, Christians, and Jews were already living and peacefully coexisting. Leading up to and immediately following the Second World War, in which approximately 6 million Jews were systematically killed, immigration to Palestine soared. According to the Jewish Virtual Library, persecution of Jews in Germany led to immigration numbers from 1929 to 1939 to reach 250,000 immigrants to Palestine. In 1948, the year the Israeli state was founded, there were over 100,000 Jewish immigrants, and in 1949 alone there were almost 240,000 Jewish immigrants to the new ethnostate. Even with the atrocities of the Jewish Holocaust, countries were reluctant to take in Jewish refugees. In 1939, the ship the St. Louis carrying more than 900 Jewish refugees from Germany was denied entry to the U.S. and forced back to Europe, Britain, France, Belgium, Netherlands. 254 passengers later died in the Holocaust. The 1947 film, Gentleman's Agreement, with Gregory Peck even showcased anti-Semitism in the United States. This graph shows Jewish immigration to Palestine and the Israeli state. You'll see that most immigration before 1948 came from Eastern Europe, and following the establishment of the Israeli ethnostate, immigration from Western Asia, aka the Middle East, and Northern Africa greatly increased. These are Muslim-majority countries. Palestinians resisted the takeover of their lands and homes, and Arab and Muslim states refused to go along with the partition of Palestine at the hands of the League of Nations. As a result, when Palestine was ultimately carved up to yet again take away its inhabitants' property, homes and agency, Arab nations reacted by pressuring or forcing out their Jewish inhabitants and attacking the new Israeli state, leading to the First Arab-Israeli War covered earlier in the lesson. In the decade following its founding, the State of Israel saw extensive migration from Arab states. The Jewish Virtual Library estimates that of the 820,000 Jewish refugees from the Arab world between 1948 and 1972, more than 200,000 found refuge in Europe and North America while 586,000 were resettled in Israel. People identifying as Jewish and moving to the newly created State of Israel were given immediate citizenship status, housing assistance, financial aid, food and social services, free Hebrew language classes and employment assistance. To this day, Israelis have universal health care, and all public universities are heavily subsidized, so students pay only a fraction of the tuition. Additionally, Israel sells property stolen from Palestinians to buyers from abroad.
Representative Gottheimer, why are you allowing events that are illegal under international law to happen in this town? Congressman.
Teaneck, New Jersey is located just outside New York City. It's known for being racially diverse and for its sizable Jewish population.
You know that I'm a church music director?
Yes.
Yeah, it's every Jewish parent's dream job for their Jewish son to become a church music director. That's a stupid joke.
This is Teaneck resident Rich Siegel. He went viral on the internet after he asked the town council to shut down an Israeli real estate event.
What this real estate event is going to do is it's going to fan the flames. If it goes forward, there will be a demonstration. I know there's going to be a demonstration because I'm going to organize it.
But pro-Palestinian voices have faced major backlash, especially for protesting in front of synagogues where most of these real estate events happen.
This is the issue of the Jewish link that came out right after that. And you can see the headline is Hate March Through Teaneck. Look at this, pro-Palestinian mob. The word mob, can you imagine anything more incendiary? And it's in print here. Look at this. They have events here to promote settlement expansion.
The paper that runs ads for these real estate events is co-published by town councilman Mark Schwartz. In fact, residents tell us a number of town council members have contributed to an atmosphere of hostility and misinformation. That includes Mayor Michael Pagan, who's denied Israel's genocide on Gaza, and Councilwoman Hillary Goldberg, a vocal supporter of Israel who's doxed pro-Palestinian activists on her social media pages and accused them of being anti-Semitic.
Why are we out there, to hate Jews? Or are we out there because Israel's ruthlessly murdered over 32,000 people? And they're selling West Bank settlement homes directly to Jews here in New Jersey while this genocide is going on.
So why are settlements a problem? Because they're Jewish-only communities built on stolen Palestinian land, and they're illegal under international law. Put simply, that means...
Predominantly, the real estate that's being sold is redlined real estate. It's for sale for Jews only.
One prominent Teaneck rabbi appears in real estate brochures promoting his exclusively Jewish community in an exclusively Jewish town and invites others from the U.S. to join him.
This is the synagogue right over here. That's been hosting the real estate sales event.
Some local Palestinian residents and allies hold car rallies to demonstrate against these events. They've asked not to be identified out of concern for retaliation by the public.
Generations of our family members have lived there, and now they're going to be kicked out by some guy from Rhode Island or Staten Island, whatever his name is. And they're doing it openly, too. They're advertising it in newspapers, online, Instagram, everywhere.
One company posted an image advertising pre-sale settlements in a visibly war-torn Gaza, calling it a joke. But Israeli real estate expos are a very real thing, where agents seek buyers in countries like the US, Canada, and South Africa. They've been happening in Teaneck for nearly 20 years.
We're simply 20, 30, 40 cars driving by the town. That alone is driving them nuts.
Zionism is defined as an ethno-cultural nationalist movement to establish and support a Jewish homeland through colonization in the region of Palestine, which roughly corresponds to the land of Israel in Judaism. Zionists wanted to create a Jewish state in Palestine with as much land as many Jews and as few Palestinian Arabs as possible. The Zionist claim to Palestine was based on the notion that the Jews' historical right to the land outweighed that of the Arabs. Anti-Zionism then is opposition to the Zionist movement. Anti-Zionism stands against land grab actions. Anti-Semitism, on the other hand, is hostility, prejudice, or discrimination towards Jewish people because of who they inherently are, not because of what they do. The difference between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism is that anti-Zionism is against acts that hurt Palestinians, while anti-Semitism is against Jewish people because of their religious or cultural identity. Since the establishment of the Israeli ethnostate, the Jewish diaspora may now face violence and prejudice for their real or imagined association with or support for the political entity of Israel and Israel's actions in Palestine. Here are just a few sample headlines from 2025. You'll notice they all mention anti-Semitism rather than anti-Zionism, and the only mention of Palestinians is negative. Palestinians often struggle for unbiased representation in media. Anti-Semitic prejudice, which before was more clearly due to ethnic or cultural-based bigotry, which is always unjustified, now has the lines blurred by legitimate anti-Zionist opposition to the harmful actions of the Israeli Jewish ethnostate. Thus, the Jewish diaspora is at higher risk of discrimination and violence due to their perceived ties to the Jewish ethnostate, which has and continues to violate human rights and commit genocide. The establishment of the Israeli ethnostate also affects the U.S. population. Regarding effects on the U.S. population, let's first establish that we are talking about people within the United States. Per the AC, everyone in the U.S., regardless of citizenship or immigration status, possesses fundamental rights under the Constitution and federal law, including freedom of speech, religion, and the right to due process. These protections, particularly the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause, apply to all persons, prohibiting states from depriving anyone of life, liberty, or property without due process. In the second Trump administration, which started January 21, 2025, curtailment of free speech that was not favorable of Israel was swift. Many college students who had been participating in pro-Palestine activism during the previous years were quickly detained by Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, often without warrants, proper procedure, or due process. Friends and family were not told where detainees were taken or held, and activists were threatened with deportation frequently. Mahmoud Khalil, Columbia University student who helped organize pro-Gaza protests. He is a U.S. green card holder, married to a U.S. citizen, detained by Immigration Customs Enforcement March 8 to June 10, 2025, still facing threat of deportation for speaking against Israel. Rumeysa Ozturk is a Tufts University PhD student whose student visa was revoked by ICE because she contributed to an opinion piece in the school paper which criticized Israel a year prior. She was detained on March 25, 2025, but ultimately released. Now let's get into the weeds a bit and take a look at the basic influence that pro-Israel lobbyists have in U.S. politics.
With Israel accused of committing genocide in Gaza thanks to US weapons, political support and funding, a lot of people are asking just why is the US so staunchly pro-Israel? Well, the answer isn't all that simple, but a big part of the conversation is a particular lobby group called the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, or AIPAC. Its mission: to push pro-Israel policies in the US and get politicians to vote for them. It's donated to most of the current members of the US Congress, funding 342 out of all 535. Records show that it's the biggest spending campaign group when it comes to representing a foreign interest in domestic US politics, and AIPAC is spending big on getting its favoured candidates elected. Take this tweet about the Democratic congressional primary in Illinois. AIPAC is taking credit for the defeat of candidate Tina Collins. Collins is a community organiser and lifelong anti-gun violence activist. She also called Israel's war on Gaza genocide. AIPAC spent hundreds of thousands of dollars funding attack ads to kill her campaign, which she lost. So how did AIPAC become the most prominent foreign affairs lobby group in the US? It fundraises through glittering annual galas where both Democrats and Republicans scramble to secure speaking spots.
The US-Israel relationship is special and strong.
After all, AIPAC prides itself on being non-partisan. AIPAC boasts a long list of rich backers who it traditionally uses to funnel money to its preferred candidates and also to donate to pro-Israel Washington think tanks to influence Middle East policy. Remember when former US President Donald Trump recognized Jerusalem as the Israeli capital and moved the embassy there? Or when he tore up the Iran nuclear deal? Yes, AIPAC. Or the $300 billion in mostly military aid the US has sent Israel since its founding? Also AIPAC. Its army of lobbyists has unfettered access to officials in Congress. This is where it has traditionally focused its energy and money. You might have seen video of pro-Palestinian activists talking to AIPAC lobbyists.
While you're having your lunch, just think about the children in Gaza who are starving.
AIPAC also bankrolls politicians' trips to Israel.
Hello from Israel!
Here are 24 House Democrats last year taking in the sights. Archaeological ruins, the old city, supposed Hezbollah smuggling tunnel.
It's pretty surreal to actually go down there.
Well, some American voters might think it also surreal that AIPAC's most recent winning strategy pits Democrat against Democrat. It spent $50 million on the 2022 midterms, including more than $17 million in direct donations, and it spent double on Democrats than on Republicans.
Thank you, AIPAC.
It successfully helped defeat 13 candidates who AIPAC claims would have undermined the US-Israel relationship. Don't take my word for it. It's all written here in AIPAC's Political Achievements fact sheet. It's expected to spend $100 million on this year's election, but it isn't acting alone. It set up a big money affiliate called the United Democracy Project, which also spent money to defeat Keena Collins in Illinois and is now funding attack ads against members of the Squad, the young progressive group of Democrats, which includes the sole Palestinian-American member of Congress, Rashida Tlaib. In November, 22 of her fellow Democrats joined Republicans in voting to censure Tlaib because she used the pro-Palestinian phrase, from the river to the sea. At least 18 of those Democrats received donations from AIPAC. As the Israel lobby slogan goes, being pro-Israel is good policy and good politics.
The most recent and blatant example of Israel's influence in U.S. politics is the Iran war. On February 28, 2026, the U.S. and Israel launched airstrikes on Iran, assassinating the supreme leader as well as destroying a girls' primary school and killing over 150 people, most of them children. Don't forget that the so-called threat of Iran were, according to President Trump, quote, obliterated after U.S. strike in June 2025. And the U.S. used to have a nuclear deal with Iran from which President Trump withdrew the U.S. back in 2018. Speaking generally about U.S. military spending, we can see from the 2023 fiscal year budget that over 60% of funds were allocated to military spending. Don't forget, this was before the second Trump administration, which skyrocketed spending for poorly trained IC agents under DHS, and which slashed established federal employees and programs. Then, after the U.S. and Israel jointly attacked Iran in February 2026, President Trump then made comments to the nation in April that daycare, Medicaid, and Medicare couldn't be funded by the federal government because, quote, we're fighting wars, we have to take care of one thing, military protection. The United States consistently shows that those in power would rather spend government money on wars rather than on healthcare for its people. In 2024, 72 out of 195 countries worldwide had universal health coverage. Of top 30 countries globally on the World Healthcare Index, only the United States and the United Arab Emirates fail to provide universal healthcare to their people. During remarks to the Texas House of Representatives on March 19, 2026, Representative Christian Menefee criticized President Trump over his war in Iran.
The gentleman from Texas is recognized for a minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was 5 years old in 1993 when Tupac Shakur said, you know, it's funny, when it rains it pours, but they got money for wars, but can't feed the poor. Today, those words feel as real as ever. President Trump, no one wants this war, and the American people literally cannot afford it. Now, I'm not an economist, but I understand that the U.S. war with Iran has shaken global markets, driven oil prices up more than 40%, and is even raising fears of a worldwide recession, impacting flights and the cost of goods. We feel it at home, where the price of gas is far more expensive than it's ever been. But this isn't just about economics, it's about accountability. As a lawyer, I understand all too well that every president, including Donald Trump, takes an oath to defend the Constitution. And that Constitution gives Congress, not the president, the power to declare war. Yet Congress was sidelined. The American people were given no clear cause, no clear strategy, and no clear end game. We cannot afford this, not economically and not morally. America's conscience cannot afford it. And when leaders promise peace but deliver war, that is not just a policy failure, it's a betrayal of trust. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Remember earlier we defined Zionism as a movement for the establishment/continuance of a Jewish state in Palestine. Christian Zionism then is Christian support for Israeli control of Palestine, driven by the belief that the return of Jews to their biblical homeland is a fulfillment of prophecy and necessary for the second coming of Jesus Christ.
It's estimated that every year evangelicals give around $200 million to Israel. Worldwide donations from the Jewish community far surpass that, but Christian contributions continue to rise and show no signs of slowing down. And some organizations specifically raise money for Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank, which are illegal under international law.
We're talking about millions of dollars and political support that is used to continue my oppression.
That's Munzir Ishaq, a Palestinian Christian pastor who lives in Bethlehem, the city where Jesus is believed to have been born that's now surrounded by this massive wall. It's one of the most imposing parts of Israel's military occupation of Bethlehem and other Palestinian territories, an occupation that's now over 50 years old, meaning several generations of Palestinians have never known freedom.
When you support a specific state who has racist policies and is enforcing an apartheid state, that would be unbiblical in my mind, right? That wouldn't be loving thy neighbor as yourself.
You know, we read the same Bible, but then they are using the Bible as a weapon against me. You know, we Christians call the Bible Injil, the good news. So they've turned the good news into our nightmare.
Why is their read of the Bible so different?
Evangelicals read the Bible in a very literal and simple way. They believe that you have to trust Israel so that God blesses you. So it's like Israel becomes a gauge of whether you receive blessing from God. You know, it makes me wonder what kind of God they are meeting in the Bible. The God I meet in the Bible is a God of love, is a God of peace. They see in it an image of God who's a tribal God who favors one nation over everyone else based on a promise that's thousands of years old.
But for Christian Zionists like Sharon, that promise is prophecy. Many believe that the establishment of Israel in 1948, which displaced the majority of the Palestinians who lived there, was all part of God's divine plan.
We see all over God's word that the Jewish people at a certain point in history would begin to find their way back home. And we know that's happened in May 1948 when the state became a real nation. And ever since then, the Jewish people have been coming home. It's a miracle, and we've been living in Bible prophecy ever since.
Do you think Jesus, who preached love thy neighbor, would be okay seeing a wall dividing people like that and cutting off people from their land?
He probably would have quoted Genesis 12:3 and said, I'll bless those who bless my people.
When you're talking, I feel like there's a lot of support and elevation of the Jewish people having Israel. But doesn't that contradict the principles of equality that Christianity preaches?
Well, then I think we'd have to go back to God and ask him why he chose the Jewish people. He chose them to be a light to the nations, according to his word. He chose them to bring the Messiah through. I think the key is study what God says, not what man says.
To be clear, not all American Christians read the Bible like this. In fact, in the last few years, several prominent U.S. churches have come out in support of Palestinian rights, even endorsing the Palestinian boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement targeting Israel. But even so, the people who do believe in this prophecy have a huge following. And for them, it all culminates into a biblical grand finale called the end times.
Somebody said, I want to understand the end times, where you just need to look at three things. You look at Jesus, you look at the Jews, and you look at Jerusalem.
Many evangelicals believe that once Jews fully control the land, Jesus will return to earth and rapture Christians up to heaven.
To believers, it's going to be a time of ecstasy and joy and excitement and glory. But to those who do not know him, it's going to be a day of judgment.
If you're a Christian, you will not be around for the tribulation period. You'll be safely in heaven.
And this tribulation period, some believe, is a violent and bloody war for those who remain behind.
Jesus Christ will speak the word, and he will summon, in the most dramatic act of warfare in human history, he will bring about the slaughter of those who reject him.
And in some interpretations, they believe that 2/3 of the Jews will die. So these Christian Zionists, not all of them believe this specific theology, but many of them do. You're promoting them to come to a specific location in order for them, or 2/3 of them, to die.
In addition to the U.S. joining Israel in its military aggression, the two countries both have a dearth of privacy protections. Author Antony Lowenstein wrote a book called The Palestine Laboratory, examining Israel's practice of testing out weapons and surveillance technology and brutal control tactics on the Palestinian people and then marketing/selling these battle-tested weapons and tech abroad. Additionally, both Israel and the U.S. use artificial intelligence, super-fast information processing software, to curtail the privacy and rights of its people. Among its many uses of AI, Israel has assault rifles transfer coordinates to automate weapons firing systems and drone strikes, and the U.S. uses flock safety cameras which allow for warrantless searches by law enforcement, including Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, to track down everyday people not convicted of any crime.
Israel is one of the world's leading suppliers of weapons, spyware, and digital forensic tools. But what helped Israel earn this global reputation? Investigative research conducted by journalist Antony Lowenstein reveals that Palestine has become a testing ground for Israel's border security, surveillance, and weaponry since 1967, and that Israel has been making huge profits from making Palestine its laboratory. The Israeli military is even testing artificial intelligence technologies and urban security systems in the occupied West Bank, despite controversies surrounding its ethics. For example, an AI-controlled gun was installed at a military checkpoint on the busy Ash-Shuhada street in the occupied Palestinian city of Hebron in 2022. Manufactured by the Israeli company Smart Shooter, the gun fires stun grenades and sponge-tipped bullets and is also capable of firing tear gas. The same company was contracted by the US Defense Department and in recent years has been exhibiting its weapons systems in London and Paris. Israeli companies promote their products as battle-tested, often referring to their use on Palestinians in Gaza, the occupied West Bank, and beyond. These companies are private only in name and have strong ties with the Israeli army.
The most infamous, I guess, is NSO Group, Pegasus technology, which allows your mobile phone, Android or iPhone, to be hacked without you even knowing, all your information taken. A lot of the people who started that were veterans in the military, and it's regularly framed as, this rogue Israeli company selling all this crazy spyware to countries around the world. No. NSO Group is basically working on behalf and with the Israeli state.
More recently, the major destination for Israeli arms exports has been Europe, where they have played a central role in helping the EU push back refugees. However, even in 2004, more than a decade before the uptick in refugee arrivals to the EU, US border authorities used Israel's Hermes 450 drone to keep a watchful eye on the US-Mexico border, where the aircraft played a pivotal role in preventing migrants from crossing into the country. In August 2022, the Times of Israel published a puff piece recycling Israeli military talking points that boasted of how the Hermes 900 afforded surgical precision during an assault on Gaza. But such surgical strikes reportedly killed at least 17 Palestinian citizens, among them women and children. In other words, more than half of those slain were civilians. Israel's arms sales skyrocketed by over 55% in the past 2 years alone, reaching a staggering $11.3 billion as of 2021. The Israeli government has approved every defense deal brought to it since 2007, and today the country stands among the top 10 weapons-dealing nations globally.
So now we've talked about the effects that the establishment of the Israeli ethnostate had and continues to have on Palestinians, the Jewish diaspora, and the US population. If you would be so kind, let's take an evaluation. You have two options for completing your evaluation. Option 1. Write your response on the paper handout that the instructor will distribute, and return it to the instructor next week on Thursday. Option 2. Scan the below QR code or go to the link shown on the screen, type in your responses and submit it online. When you're done, feel free to open the linked YouTube playlist containing many amazing videos that we didn't have time to watch in our lesson today. Thank you and enjoy learning.